a friend of I have here who this, he figured out that one of the major things that happens to people as they get older is they fall down all of a sudden. And that triggers all
Yes,
kinds of horrible things. So
Yes,
he
we
put
do.
together a concept where instead of the normal gym, you go to a place where you do some conditioning, but a lot of it is just making sure you don't fall down.
Oh.
Teaching you to do the things so you can avoid, like you
That's
don't
good.
go downstairs with two things in your hands, for instance.
I would have done this. I would have done the same thing if I'd been 35 years old. My particular accident. I didn't trip. I didn't lose my balance. I just crashed.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, so much
Hello,
for that.
Rick.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, Rick.
Hi, Rick.
Hi.
Welcome. Good to see
Hi.
you.
Nice to meet you all virtually.
Nice to meet you, Rick. I read your paper, and the one that Joe distributed. It's the most succinct and most succinct explanation of what the issues are that I've read anywhere. Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you.
That was
I
great.
appreciate that.
Do we all know how to access that paper? I'm not sure I do. I know how to do that.
I did not see it.
I didn't either.
Oh,
Joe sent it around. Joe Dwayne
Yeah.
sent it around.
I thought I sent it to the entire group.
Yeah, you did. You did, Joe.
Anyway, let me. I sent that, and I sent Rick's link to his Cornell University bio page, so we all have an idea of Rick's career and his expertise, etc. And I sent him, conversely, our bios, so that we don't need to take time now all introducing ourselves. He's got that. So just let me say, when I talked to him originally about coming to our Zoom meeting, he said, you better take a look at this this paper I've written, because maybe after you read that, you won't want me to join. So I read it, and then I spoke to him later, and I said, I don't understand what you're talking about. That's a fine paper. It's and he said, well, some people, tend to react emotionally. I think that's what you said to that, and have a lot of objections and this and that. And then he said, I consider myself a radical centrist. Isn't that what, And I said, well, I think, for myself, and I think for others of the group, I consider myself a radical realist. And it's not our intent to indoctrinate the Exeter student body with any kind of ideology or any kind of fixed views on the climate crisis, but it's our intent to give them the opportunity to access basic information and the means to investigate that information and critically assess that information and research and discuss and come to their own conclusions about the climate crisis and what needs to be done. So, I assume that no one here has any adverse reaction at all to what Rick has written, but just the opposite, as Whit just said.
Joe, you did send it to, at least I got it. So
Yes, you did. Yeah, you sent it Sunday evening, Joe. I've got the email right in front of me. You sent it to our group. Yep.
Yeah. So if for some reason anybody, those of you who haven't seen it yet, look and can't find it, just let that be known, and we'll send it again.
Yeah. So
there are 11 members of the Cal team when we're at full strength, and currently there are 9 of us here, and 10. And I think that at least Carl, I know at least 2 that can't be here. So I guess that's I know Carl can't be here, and Jim Hansen is Jim Hunter is in Israel, so it's the time difference is not good for him. So I think we're all here. And I just would like to say, are there any members of we had a we haven't had a full team meeting for a long time, but we did have a very significant meeting with another member of the class of 64, Joe Gould, to discuss what started out to be a discussion about a fundraising, a fund idea that Carl had thought about and was just wanted to get a little ideas of it. It turned into a discussion about sort of a different thing. I just hope everyone has had a chance to see the recording of that Zoom that I sent around, and we have some things I'd like to talk about that too at some point. So I don't know, I don't have an agenda set up, so I think we can just see what makes sense here.
Well, maybe to put Rick on the spot, he could. Our original focus and project and intent was, as written in that paragraph in that statement of intent on curriculum, was to encourage Exeter to put on their core curriculum a basic, full year course open to all, required actually of all students on the climate crisis generally. You're starting with science and all the way through the economics and politics to philosophical issues, the whole the whole gamut of issues on a gen ed introductory level. And so that's spelled out in maybe too much detail in that fourth paragraph of the statement of purpose. But to do that, to make that happen, we would need faculty and more than buy-in, but championship and at least administrative buy-in, and we got neither. And so then, instead of dropping it, we shifted to working with the students themselves to put a course of study like that together, a series of lectures, presentations, discussion sessions on those various topics throughout the year, presented by either Exeter faculty, outside speakers, or students themselves, but themselves creating a basic educational program on climate-related issues. That's kind of where we are now, and you've seen that. You saw the more detailed, and I just got back what you sent. Thank you, Rick. I'll look at that in detail. Thank you so much. But if you could just, with your background, not only in the science, but in education generally, and education not only in depth, but in introductory courses you've given, and the outreach courses you've given to community and high schools, this is exactly the kind of focus that we need. And your experience with Exeter. You were in the class, Rawson, and you've had experience trying to influence Exeter's. So if I can put you on the spot and have you give us, your reaction to what you know about what we're trying to do.
Okay. First of all, thank you all for letting me crash your meeting. And I hope by the end of our time together that you will have found it to be worthwhile. I'm a Exeter class of 1971, so Bill Rawson was a classmate of mine, although not a close friend when I was at Exeter. And I am a geologist by training, so I'm not a climate scientist, but I know a lot about paleoclimate. I've taught courses on energy and climate change. I teach the energy component part of the course, and one of my atmospheric science colleagues teaches the climate part of the course. But just to be straightforward with my background, Joe referred to my previous efforts working with the Academy, and this started back probably 15 years ago or a little more now, when I wrote what turned out to be a controversial note in our class notes, making some comment. This was sometime in the first decade of this century about it's too bad that with all of the issues that the world is facing, that Exeter does not see fit to teach a single earth science course, or earth and climate science, or earth and atmospheric science course. And this apparently was controversial enough that the whoever manages the class notes on the academy side went to the then chair of the science department, who's not the current chair of the science department, by the way, and then in a mistake that you never want to do with one of your alumni, on the very off chance, exceedingly off chance in my case, that I would give them a very large gift. The alumni affairs officer forwarded the science chair's response to our class representatives, who forwarded it unedited to me, where the then chair of science department said, there's nothing that our students are smart. There's nothing that they can't learn about the earth by reading a few good books, and so on. So that what I ran into is probably pretty similar to what you ran into when you approached the academy on these topics at a later time. My subsequent interaction with the academy did involve meeting with the entire science faculty in one of their faculty meetings, and then after that, actually giving an assembly address to the entire student body. That was about 10 years ago that I did that, and so on. So there was some progress, and they do have a earth and climate science class on the books right now. I don't know how frequently it's taught or whatever. So there has been a little progress. And so I did in my academy lecture, and for the science department, I showed them a series of pictures that basically says, with 3 meters of sea level rise, the sea level will be lapping at the foundations of Wetherell Hall, and with 7 meters of sea level rise, which is what's projected to happen when the Greenland ice cap melts or the West Antarctic ice cap melts. The academy building will at some immediacy here to wanting the academy to be interested in these issues. Mm-hmm. But what I thought I'd do now, I'm going to put my academic administrator's hat on for a minute, because I have been an associate dean of engineering here at Cornell, and a department chair here at Cornell, and so on, and give you a little bit of perspective from the other side of the issue. So one of the things that, at least in any university setting, but I also assume at Exeter, is administrators' hands are significantly tied by having faculty with tenure. And in that sense, and I assume, I don't know what the Exeter tenure situation or tenure system is, but I assume they have a form of tenure. And if that's true, then you cannot lead in the same way that you might lead a company, or you might lead an orchestra, or anything else. Leadership in academia is a much more tricky thing to do. And one of the things that I learned as an administrator is that at least in universities, you lead by controlling the process by which decisions are made. You don't just make a decision and tell everybody underneath you, now we're going to do this. The way you lead is by controlling the process, who you appoint to committees, with the charge that you give to committees and so on. And then the committee hopefully comes up with the result which is best for the institution and might be best for the, for the, the science department and everything else. So none of us can go to, say, Bill Rawson and tell him, we want this to be done. And even if Bill Rawson wants it to be done, he can't just go and tell the faculty, now we're going to do this and have that happen. So if he wants it to be accomplished, what he would do is to appoint a faculty committee to study it and to, and if he wants to kill it, he'll put one group of faculty on the committee. If he wants it to succeed, he'll put a different group of faculty on that committee. And so on. But my impression is that Bill hasn't done anything. Maybe that's a little bit harsh. He did attend a talk that I gave to our class via Zoom last spring and said he liked it and invited me to visit the academy and so on. But my impression is from not so much from last spring, but from previous occurrences that he's not necessarily, climate isn't the highest thing on his agenda, let's put it that way. Now, what might be more successful, and I must admit I haven't tried this, would be to approach the current director or chair of the science department, a guy named Albert Legere. And Albert happens to be a geologist like me. So it's at least possible that Albert, and I don't know what his administrative skills are, but he might be able to organize a faculty study group or committee or something like that to see how the science department might approach these. And then that effort might expand out to other departments and so on. And Joe was kind enough to share with me a kind of a list of topics that you guys have put together, a very comprehensive list of topics that you guys have put together that should be in a curriculum. And one of the things I did today when I was looking that over was to organize it into what sorts of disciplines might do each of the things that you listed on that, what's kind of the main and the secondary discipline, traditional disciplines that might, deal with that. Because as you well know from what you've done, the science, climate change is not just a science issue. It's not just a economic issue. It's not just a cultural issue. It's all of the above. And one of the points that I tried to make in that still unpublished manuscript that you guys received is that, in fact, dealing with the climate crisis is going to be the hardest thing that humans have ever done. And it's going to require us to fire on all cylinders, to set aside petty grievances and work together if we're going to be successful doing that. And, on a miniature scale, the same is true of a place like Exeter. They are going to have to work together, overcome petty grievances and, walled gardens between different departments and things like that, if they want to address the climate crisis the way it should be addressed. Now, what I proposed to the science faculty now 15 years ago or so, was that they consider designing some sort of what I had called a capstone course for seniors, actually, that would pull together all of their previous knowledge in various different science disciplines, chemistry, physics, and so on, but would also pull together, history and economics and, even religion and so on. A point that Joe and I talked about when we talked earlier was the fact that, human population is basically the driver behind most of the issues that we're facing. And there are certainly religious barriers to doing the one thing which would be incredibly inexpensive and incredibly effective for dealing with population, and that would trickle down to climate, and that would be to educate women in third world countries, since fertility rates are inversely proportional to the educational level of women in a society. That would cost almost nothing, and so on. So this is an area where, say, the religion department at Exeter could be involved in the discussion, and philosophy would be involved in the discussion. You could put together an amazing senior capstone course or experience or whatever you want, which would involve many of the major departments in the academy. You could even do things like you could even perhaps engage the modern languages department. For example, you might want to examine why the French have a very different attitude towards nuclear reactors than, people from other cultures and societies and so on. So this is what I had proposed to the Academy. They haven't done it yet, and they may never do it because institutions like that change very slowly. One of the other things, just that you may already know, but I did it for my own interests here, I'm trying to pull it up right now, is I went through and I looked at the distribution of faculty at Exeter based on their department and so on, and perhaps you've done this also. But it's a revealing exercise, because this is the where the faculty are distributed shows you where the center of gravity of the institution is, and how difficult it will be to move towards a different in a different direction. And of course, what you don't see when you just go through their website and categorize all the faculty is whether the faculty are full-time or half-time or not. And I assume that explains the biggest discrepancy, which is in terms of bodies, the music department is almost twice as large as any other department on campus at Exeter. Music has about 49 faculty members. The next largest department is English with 30, science has 25, mathematics has 27, something like that. So if you were to add up all of the sort of traditional liberal arts departments, and many of you may have gone through a liberal arts education, so I'm not in any way trying to be negative about a liberal arts education, but in an institution where science is in a distinct minority, 25 out of 220 some odd faculty, it's hard to move an institution like that, move the whole institution in a direction, at least by if one frames it in terms of climate science being what's needed. I I can rattle on some more, but I think you might want to have a discussion rather than just listening to me talk. So I'll stop right there and see where the discussion goes.
So Rick, let me just say, in fairness to Exeter, we've seen that they have an objective in their climate action plan of having a core curriculum course that would equip all students with basic sustainability literacy. And this is an objective to be achieved by 2031. So, I think at this point, for this group, our particular initiative, we realized several months ago that we're not going to be able to move Exeter off the curriculum dime on this. And so what we've been talking about is encouraging the students to put together their own program on a club kind of basis, to organize various presentations and talks, covering this same gamut. What you've described as a capstone course is basically, what we've described as an introductory gen ed course. It's just, a different level. But what do you think about the idea of encouraging them to do this on their own and involve Exeter faculty who are willing, and involve outside speakers, and to do research on their own, have their own discussion sessions?
Well, I first of all, I think students are an amazing force, and the students are likely able to move the institution in a direction faster than any group of alumni are. Exeter as an institution is likely to respond much more quickly to student pressure than it would to any of us old guys, trying to pressure the institution. I will say one of the things that we chatted about in my class video last spring that Bill Rawson was at, I floated the idea of having student project teams, and actually the Exeter, the institution, giving those project teams access to actual sustainability, energy use data, carbon footprint, whatever you want to say, of the institution itself, for them to measure, to analyze, to suggest changes, and so on. And he actually, at least, what can he say in front of a bunch of people except, oh yeah, that sounds interesting. But this is something that we do at Cornell all the time, and it's been exceedingly successful, is to put teams of students together and give them access to actual data from in some cases, from the institution itself. So for example, Exeter is in the process of installing geothermal heat pumps for their buildings right now, which is a good thing to do. And they're also installing solar panels and so on. Well, why not have, gives the students access to the technical data from, those heat pumps? How much are they actually saving, and so on? What's the balance? If Exeter has limited money, is it better to invest more in solar panels or in heat pumps, or some other technology, to get the students actively involved and feel like they are managing or helping to manage the institution itself. And they would learn a huge amount in the process. Cornell students say that they learn far more from their project team experiences than they ever learn in a formal classroom setting.
Joe Simons, I see, has raised his electronic hand. Do you have a question, Joe?
I'm gonna raise mine.
This is probably the least important question of all. I want to certainly thank you for all you offered us so far. I want to know where the picture that your virtual background was taken from.
That's That's taken from the north side of the Tian Shan Mountains in western China. So the Tian Shan is an amazing mountain range. It's completely landlocked, thousands of kilometers from any ocean, or what geologists call plate boundaries, and yet the peaks that you see behind me are 7 kilometers high. So anyway, it's a lovely place. I've only been there on field trips, though. I do most of my research in the Argentine and Chilean Andes. So
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you so much for telling me.
thank you.
Conrad,
Yes.
I think I should report at 5 o'clock today, after a number of days chasing him, I finally had my conversation with Bill Rawson today. And one of the reasons I think I got him to respond was that I told him we were going to have this call, and that if he had any message or anything he wanted to convey to us, it would be a good opportunity to do that. So it was a very long call. It lasted about an hour.
Goodness.
And it was extremely interesting. First of all, because he reported on the two things we were most interested in finding out that we hadn't heard back about, which was the trustees meeting and the meeting he had had with the students. And he went on at great length, explained point by point how the trustees meeting went. And I'll explain that in a second if you want. But I think the most interesting part, given what we're talking about with Rick, because by the way, the other hook, I said that we were going to meet with Rick today, and he was extremely glowing comments about the experience with Rick and about Rick and his suggestions, and he thought it was going to be a great call. You're going to love it. He really knows it's the best thing you could have done. A great idea, fantastic. He thought it was a great idea. So the most interesting thing regarding what we're talking about now is that the students took a lot of these ideas that Joe mentioned to him about the fact that, okay, yeah, we have some great courses in junior and senior years, but they're all electives, and a lot of them aren't even given because not enough people sign up for them. We have actually looked at those courses, and they are quite impressive. They are multidisciplinary, and they involve different points of view, and they have a lot of freedom for the students to structure the way the program is actually carried out. But the students knew very little about them when we met with them. So we figured out that they really, and then we later figured out that an awful lot of the students were not seniors like we thought originally. They were actually lowers and juniors that are going to be there longer, which is great for what we're trying to do, because they did exactly what they told us they were going to do and what we encouraged them to do, which is to promote their idea of having the climate crisis being much more present and being addressed much more directly and at a much higher level of priority than it is now, and much earlier in the process. And that was, found that, so he said the meeting with students was great. He said it was really, they were full of all kinds of great ideas. And we're going to meet again early spring, and they had whole sorts of initiatives. They had talked to a lot of their faculty people about them. I encouraged them to go through here what Rick mentioned, the committee. The committee is the sustainability committee, with whom we have been in charge. We have been in touch, not as much as we would like, but whose chair is Andrew McTammany, who is a chemistry teacher. And he just encouraged them to channel all the suggestions you have. There's a sustainability committee, and they're the ones that take that to the faculty. And so the one thing I did notice was that when he told me how much was already in the curriculum and how much our faculty already does, and I said, Bill, that may be true at the senior level, but it's not early. It's not, in our view, after looking at those courses carefully, it's nowhere near early enough, and it just doesn't reach very many people. It's not very well known. He says, yeah, you're absolutely right. It's not very well known. It doesn't have the visibility it requires, and it's not anywhere near as early as and what they proposed, the students proposed, was that they used the model they followed with diversity, equity, and inclusion last year, which became the signature theme of the school, and it turned into a English class taught, I think, in lower year, that is all designed around diversity, equity, and inclusion topics. And what they want for climate action is for the same thing to be done when the climate disruption crisis becomes the main focus of the academy, and it is taught early so they understand climate values and the issues around climate early in the process, and they can design and they can figure out, they can understand all the rest of the offerings the academy has and make their plans for the rest of their years as students there. So he says, I really hadn't understood this before. And that has happened a number of times in the things that, in the conversations with Ross, and I said, he's quite forgetful. Of course, he's a very busy guy. He forgets. He'd also forgotten that he had asked if we were willing to help in a fundraising effort for financing the infrastructure that has to be put in for the solar panels. And I had given a polite yes. I said, oh, yeah, well, of course we're going to help. But he had forgotten about that. He'd completely forgotten. He didn't remember. He said, I'm sorry, I didn't remember that you'd already answered that. But anyway, that's what happened with the students. And of course, we haven't heard back from the students, but they already are on the plan is they're going to meet with him again. I understood it 5 weeks from now. I guess they're going to, I have no idea how that process is going to work itself through the faculty and what sort of, but he did make a point of saying, I had not understood this point of being early in the process at all before. I had just not, I really appreciate that I just hadn't gotten at that, because he originally in our paper, we focused a lot on designing one particular course and followed by other courses, which he interpreted to be kind of a major, and he thought that was kind of out of place for a secondary school. So, apparently the students also proposed that there be an environmental diploma, kind of the equivalent of a major, and he said that they're going to study it, but he didn't think that would necessarily fit. But the whole process is under discussion. He says, and it is gaining a lot of ground. It's becoming, as you would expect, a much more, it's rising in importance in the school every day. That was his report on that. I can tell about the other parts of the call whenever you want, but I don't want to take up too much of the.
So just let me give, my reaction again is that it's a matter of, time frame.
Right.
It's a matter of urgency, a matter of action. And, what Bill talks about is, like I said, it's on their agenda to be accomplished by 2031. And so, he says, number one, he says, we've got these courses. I've looked through I think there's 2 courses.
No, Joe, no. About 8 courses. I can send them to you.
Okay, do that. But in terms of action, so he will have another meeting, sometime in the spring. And, that'll be the end of it. And then summer will come, and then, the fall term will start. And what is being done? Now, we've got a climate day coming up. We got climate day coming up on April 25.
Even climate action day.
Our last meeting.
Climate action day.
Pardon?
It's called Climate Action Day.
Okay, and now the word action is in there. It's coming up. And where is the action? We talked at our last full meeting about working with the students to get speakers, to get, some involvement. I've contacted the students to ask, what is their involvement? It's being led by McTammany, who is their advisor, and they have no idea whatsoever. It's completely being run by him, and he's not even communicating with them what Climate Action Day is going to consist of, much less involving them in it. Right. And so, and that's going to come and go in a blink of an eye, because now we're halfway through February, and it's going to, we started talking about this in January. And so let me just, right now, Rick, you said you have an alumni. You're going to be on campus in April with alumnus.
So last year was supposedly our 50th reunion, and you all know how that feels.
Yeah.
But of course it was postponed because of COVID, and my class and the academy are trying to have an on-campus reunion, 50th, delayed 50th reunion sometime in April. The most recent thing I heard though was they might, for COVID isolation reasons, they might not allow any faculty to talk to the alumni in our class, at least
So
close up.
if you're going to be there in April, could we ask the students if they would like to invite you to give a presentation to the students on any climate, whatever you think is, appropriate climate related, presentation. You've got these presentations with visuals and all. Would you be open to that if you've already addressed, 15 years ago, the entire student body?
Yeah, I'm certainly happy to do that. Yeah, obviously it will depend on the academy and their COVID protocols at the time and things like that. But if I'm there, and I actually haven't made a commitment to go to the in-person reunion yet. But if I am there, I'd be delighted to meet with the students. That's always when I am on campus, which doesn't happen often. Has happened twice in the last 2 decades, I think. Meeting with the students is usually the highlight of the event. Let me just say, Joe, that I totally agree with you that a plan that is that they hope to bring online in 2031, was it? Or something like that.
250th
is
anniversary.
At least, I mean, that's really ridiculous in terms of an educational plan. That's so far out that it, a lot of things are going to change by that point. Of course, it's a process and so on, but you can change, you can decide to teach courses, you can change the curriculum at a faster pace than that. Although in any academic institution, curriculum is the most contentious issue among faculty always, anywhere. So it will not be easy. And that's probably why they're going slow.
Yep.
Excuse me.
Hey, Joe's ahead of me. I think you raised your hand before me, Joe Simons.
Well, you actually never took your hand down, but the question I had was, you were going to talk about the contact with the trustees, and I just didn't know if there was a summary comment about that.
Okay, but before I get to that, I can do that pretty quickly. I wanted to just make a couple of points about the calendar, the timeline, which Joe was talking about. The first thing is that reference to the 2031 deadline date, well, that was done 2 years ago. The first time we ever heard him talk about it. That's a very old goal.
Right.
And at this point,
What's been done since then? Yeah, so that's the point.
Well, I don't know what's in the climate action plan as far as when the curriculum is going to be changed, but things have changed radically since 2031. I mean, so many things have changed internally, beginning with the fact that Ross in his second year as principal has taken this climate action plan which includes a lot of stuff about reducing the carbon footprint, but it also has all these other initiatives about the things that are going to happen at the academy to make it, as he says it, one of the main focal points. He didn't say the main focal point as we would like, but he says one of the main focal points of the academy. That's first thing. Second thing is, he said, listen, I understand that this part, the programming part, is the slowest of the 3 priorities I set out when I became principal. And that was 2 weeks before COVID hit. He announced that he had 3, it was in this order. Number 1 was people. Number 2 was programming. Number 3 was place. He said, we've made great progress on infrastructure and the master plan. We've made great progress on people because of the need blind admissions policy, but we're behind. We've been the slowest on programming. And I understand that. And this is a absolute emergency. I understand it. We're way behind. I get it. That's what he said about that. Now, exactly. Now we can push him, and he actually wants us to push him. And matter of fact, he wanted me to report back to him on this conversation we're having. He thought this was a great idea. He wanted to hear what we had learned after talking to Rick and on our own discussion. So I think that to say that nothing is happening, well, then the other point is when he asked specifically about what had happened when he actually wrote a memo to McTammany telling him that we were going to call him to suggest speakers. He said, what happened with that? I said, well, I wasn't the one that called him, but as I understand it, and I'm not sure I understood it correctly, and I said, Conrad Williman is the one that talked to McTammany. He immediately remembered Conrad and said, and what happened? I said, well, I understood that for Climate Action Day this year, it was just too short a time to program, particularly any of the more the busier or the more well-known speakers that the students were interested, that they expressed interest in. But he says, well, don't worry about that. There are lots of other opportunities. Don't give up on that. Make sure you send a whole bunch of suggestions. It's a great idea. Don't give up on that. Keep pushing away at this because that's a great idea. Okay, so that's what happened on that particular point. Okay, now you want the trustees. Trustees, he took 3 points. He took the climate action plan itself, and then he took the solar farm project, and then he took the joining Second Nature platform. He said on the climate action plan, they're pretty much on board. He didn't say super enthusiastic. He said we've named a group of 3 advisory board chaired by Ira Helfand. He did not mention the other 2. And this plan still is to announce it in May. There's another possibility that it will be more effective to be announced at the beginning of school next year. But I think it's still going to be May. But it all depends on what they're working through this, and they're going to come back at the next trustee meeting, and that's where we'll make that decision. That's on the climate. Of course, we don't know. All we know about in the climate action plan is this idea of becoming carbon neutral at the latest by 2030. That's all we know. And mainly through a solar plan, the solar farm, and the the geothermal stuff. We don't know the rest of it. We just don't know it.
Now, and it's buying electricity from green companies is another thing. But
I don't
anyway,
know.
this is all fine, but it's great to hear this talk, but I mean, apparently, nothing is being done. Nothing that we can see is being done. So I just think, it's great to have a geological sense of time. It's great to, understand glaciers are moving faster these days.
No,
we all have
ridiculous.
to
You can't paint it that way. It's not glaciers moving. That's just not correct. It's not correct. I mean, compared to what it was having before, now it's being addressed by the trustees, and they have a plan. I mean, you may not like the plan.
Anything.
We have every opportunity to say we don't like the plan, but don't just say nothing's happening.
Well, can
I haven't seen the plan. We're in the second or in the past.
Would you normally get to see the plan?
We're halfway through the first quarter of 2022, and I haven't seen the plan yet. So it's great to hear that he's so enthusiastic. I'm not seeing anything. So that's my point.
Yeah. Well, let me just clarify a couple of things that have been mentioned. So Climate Action Day, just for you to sort of clarify the misunderstanding of what's possible there. Climate Action Day was modeled on Martin Luther King Day, which Exeter's been doing for, I think, closer to 30 years than maybe at least 20 years. It actually came out of a meeting that I helped organize with faculty members and some other alums in 2014. And the first Climate Action Day was in February of 2015. So what Climate Action Day always has is a keynote speaker in the morning, one speaker that addresses the entire school. And then there are 2 time blocks, one after the speaker in the morning and one after the lunch, so in the afternoon. And every student, and during those time blocks, a variety of invited, about 50% alums and about 50% not people who have Exeter connections, but are seen as accomplished practitioners in an area that relates to the climate issue. They provide a workshop, an experience that people sign up for, and all students are required to attend, one in the morning and one in the afternoon. And so it's, there isn't an opportunity for more than one major speaker to address the entire student body. And when I did talk to Andrew McTammany shortly after John sent that message that Bill wanted us to talk to him. He said he's already selected a keynote speaker for this year. It's by the way, it's Earth Day is the 22nd of April on a Monday. Climate Action Day is going to be the 25th of April. I'm sorry, Friday is Earth Day, and then the following Monday is Climate Action Day. He gave me the name of the keynote speaker. It was not somebody that I knew anything about. We did discuss. I said, well, the person I think would be an excellent speaker in the future is Richard Heinberg, and he said that would be great. So I don't know. I'm going to talk to him soon about what the process is for when then could happen. But Climate Action Day has been organized by the Sustainability Committee, I guess. I mean, it was for the 5 years, the first 5 years that it happened live on campus was all. That's when Jason Brmiller was the sustainability coordinator, and then so Andrew has never organized one, an in-person Climate Action Day because of COVID, but there will be something will be happening this year. So that, there is going to be a keynote speaker, and I think the plan is for there to be some events where people are actually there, and that's about all we know about that. So I don't need to take any more time of your time now, but that's where that stands. And John, if there's a way for you to take your hand down, then it doesn't just stay there forever, unless you. I don't know quite how. I don't see that I have a way to do that. So I think you have to do that.
No, let me figure it out. Yep.
Joe can tell you. I guess Joe took his hand down. There you go. Oh yeah, there it is. So anyway, well, I guess one of the thing I would say, we've been sort of talking around the issue. What we all feel is that as much as Exeter likes to say, John, you said, Roslyn says, I get it, we have to do some things. But the point is, it doesn't feel as if anybody in any position of responsibility at Exeter understands how much has to change in a short period of time. They don't have any sense of urgency. They expect that things are going to continue, that the future is going to be more or less like what the past has been. And that's an area where I think they're sorely mistaken. And so the idea that they can not sort of have a fire lit under them and do things quickly is a problem. And I don't know.
But Alday, I'd like to say something for a minute. Okay, I understand that people are frustrated. Some people are especially frustrated in our group, but there are a lot of people on the planet who are nowhere near where Bill Rawson is, or other people in the Exeter community about this, who are thinking somehow magically, things are going to go on forever. We're going to be able to keep on consuming the way that we are. So part of what we're doing, as frustrating as it may be, is trying to educate and bring along Bill Rawson and other people in the Exeter community. Is this frustrating? Yes. Is this taking a long time? Yes, it's taking a long time. Are we going to be able to succeed? Who knows if we're going to be able to succeed? I mean, maybe going through the students and encouraging the students to be the agent of change here, maybe that is the best way. I mean, we as alumni can raise our voices, and John Coles can have, his conversation with Bill Rawson. John is the one who really, I think, knows the temperature of Bill Rawson better than anyone or the rest of us. But, if we're going to be effective, we can't be adversaries. We have to work with Bill Rawson. If he's going slowly, We have to work with him. We can nudge him along, but we have to work with him. Otherwise, he is going to push us aside and say, I can't deal with those people any longer. They're too aggressive. So I feel this is very, very important. And we have to like kind of bite our tongues and accept a certain amount of frustration if we want to move forward here.
Yeah.
Can I just say something on this adversary thing, us versus them, because we've been talking about this from the beginning. And I think that's it's upside down and backwards. I don't think we are in an adversarial relationship in terms of what we are proposing. You know, and I've told people, I had the experience in upper English class taught by Bill Schwartz. He assigned us the Grapes of Wrath one day. He was late coming to class. We waited 5 minutes, 10 minutes. He didn't show up. And instead of talking about, you know, Andover football or the Boston Red Sox, we started talking about the Grapes of Wrath as a class without a teacher there. And we had a very good discussion going when about 10 minutes later, he came in. We were students leading, you know, working together, teaching, you know, discussing on our own. Okay, he did not take that as a challenge or a threat or anything. He sat down in one of the satellite chairs on the side of the room and stayed silent. He wasn't upset. He was delighted that students were on their own, you know, leading, engaging in education. And so if, you know, if the French club in he was so delighted that about a week later, he was late again by accident. You know, had that same thing happen. But if that French club today said, we're going to have a program, we're going to have an entire, a series of presentations and lectures on French culture. We're going to talk about, you know, French literature, French poetry, French music, French painting. We're going to have a whole class on Voltaire, a whole class on Balzac. We're going to have you know, someone's going to make a presentation on Bonaparte. We're going to talk about French history, France in America, France in Africa, you know, etc. We're going to have this whole, you know, year-long presentation. Is that a threat to Exeter? That the students, you know, in the French club want to have, you know, an extended program addressing issues relating to French culture? It's not. And what is the difference in terms of the climate students wanting to put together their own, you know, program and invite, you know, invite McCamney and tell, you know, McNamee, you are the greatest. You've got all the information that all the students want. It's such a shame that just a few students, you know, have access to that in your one class. Everybody wants to hear from you. You're such a great teacher. You know, we want you to present, you know, the science side of it, and you know, the history teachers and philosophy, religion, whoever. It invites them. You know, it's not adversarial at all. It's not a challenge. It's exactly what they should want to be hearing.
Sure. Yep. Agree.
So if I could make a couple of comments, and these mostly have to do with thinking about the students, about laying out a long-term plan and getting away a little bit from the issue of you know, Bill Rawson and whether he's going too quickly or too slowly. One of the tricky things about students of this age is, well, you probably have heard the old saying that, you know, if you're not idealistic at 20, that's sad. If you're still idealistic at 60, that's sad. And of course, all of us are on the far side of 60. And the students, it is as an educator, it's a tricky business, particularly talking about climate change, to hit the right tone, and especially with students who are of high school age. How do you lay out a program, particularly if you want to reach them early in the process? How do you lay out a program which while not watering it down for some of the brightest students in the country, but also some of the most idealistic, some of the most motivated students. How do you actually design a program that goes and harnesses that energy and yet doesn't pull the wool over their eyes about the magnitude of the challenges at hand? And one of the reasons why I had advocated, when I talked with the science department for a senior capstone course, I was thinking about it from a science point of view. They need to know certain scientific principles before they can appreciate that. To give you just one example, melting of Arctic sea ice is not going to raise sea level, but melting ice in Antarctica or in Greenland will raise sea level. Well, why is that? Well, it's Archimedes' principle fundamentally, and Archimedes' principle you get in an intro physics course or something like that. And that's the kind of science thing that you need to have a certain background, Archimedes' principle, so you can then understand why Arctic sea ice, melting of Arctic sea ice won't itself raise sea level, but it will cause a lot of other problems like changing the albedo of the polar regions and so on. So these sorts of things are talking about science is in some ways easy to do because it's very or should be very sort of fact-based. It shouldn't be emotional. It should be, this is what our understanding of physics says will happen when you melt this versus that. But there are a whole bunch of other things like what do we do? How do we do it? And the intangibles of how much hope should we put into windmills, for example? How much hope should we put into windmills and solar solving all of our problems? And those are more judgment calls. The answers aren't there. I tend to think, frankly, that most people who write about the environment are putting way too much hope in solar panels and windmills. But if I tell that to students and I can back up that statement, they are not, you dash some of that idealism and some of that hope. So it's a very tricky issue as an educator to do this correctly. And so it does take some time to figure out how to, particularly if you're talking about hitting them as, in 9th or 10th grade, how do they, and how do you tailor the message for different levels? Because they mature so much between when they come in and when they come out even. It's actually much more of a maturation than it is in college, and it's a huge maturation in college. Yeah. So I think, one thing that this group can think about is how to deliver that message. I can give people fact-based things. I can say, well, the capacity factor of solar farms in upstate New York, which is not that different than Exeter region, is 11%. That means that they reach their nameplate capacity only 11% of the time. And so you can have a huge, beautiful installed capacity of a solar plant, but if it's only, has an efficiency of fundamentally of 11%, that means you've got to build a huge number of solar plants to generate enough electricity in a place like Ithaca or in a place like Exeter or wherever. So that's the main thing I wanted to say about that.
Yeah. Peter.
Yes, thank you for all this wonderful information, Rick. I'm incredibly impressed. I have 3 brief points that I'd like to say. First of all, I was really shocked, literally shocked by the number 2031. because it's exactly 1 year after what we know, what everybody agrees is the point of no return for preventing us from having a 2 degrees Celsius rise in the Earth's temperature. So it's almost as if, you know, they cynically said, well, let's see, what is that year? Okay, we'll say after that, we will have a significant change in the curriculum. And that strikes me as really cynical for one reason. The other thing is that the students need the information now. And, you know, if we wait for 9 years, the students that we have been active with will be out in the world. They will have missed the tools and the attitudes and the broad-based preparation to make them leaders. I think you know, Rick, that the name of our committee is not only climate action, but it's leadership. We're focused on developing leaders.
Yeah.
So this is as much stuff that they learn outside of the classroom than they do inside. The last point I want to make is about this whole problem of changing curriculum. The students are very wise about this. I've been incredibly impressed by the students. That they agree that having one course, or even if it's a required course, and the strategy of using the Harkness system to give a required course to all students on the campus is already a big issue. They said, no, what we're going to do is we're going to go individually to these courses that are sometimes not even given, but sometimes are given, and suggest modules, parts of the course that would deal with our real passion for improving the environment. And just an example of that, there was one student, you mentioned religion. There's one student who is a lower, who is very interested in religion, the sort of nexus between religion and climate action, and particularly the indigenous cultures, the indigenous religions. So I happen to teach a course on that. So I reached out to him, and I'm in contact with him now, and he's going to try to make sure that course is given and to include a module. And we old guys can actually help to suggest the information for that as kind of mentors. So the points that I just mentioned were sort of, we haven't touched on them yet in this discussion, but I think this may be a way forward, is working today with the leaders we want to work with now to give them, with our help and mentorship, the content that they need, so that, you know, if this wonderful course, this umbrella course that we're hoping to put in place sometime doesn't actually come around in time, the mosaic, the pieces of the mosaic will be there. And I think we can do that very acceptably. And Bill Rawson actually doesn't have to know much about my contact with William Weber. So that's a way not to, you know, ruffle any feathers. Thank you.
Now, can we hear from Whit now?
I just wanted to let Rick, thank you for joining us. It's been tremendously helpful. I just wanted to mention that when we had a group discussion with Bill Rawson, he kind of leaned on the fact that he's been able to do a lot about lowering the Academy's carbon footprint on the campus. And he's very proud of that, which I think is justified. But he didn't seem eager to go much beyond that. He did suggest that maybe we as a class could raise money to help to build replacement wetlands as a mitigation for the solar field they have in place. And I don't think anybody here really warmed up to that much, nor do I think should we. But he seemed reluctant to, you know, to get into the nuts and bolts of curriculum change. And I think you've helped explain why, because it's a tough thing to do. It's a lot of politics involved, you know, academic politics, which can be fierce, as I'm sure you know too well. So I think that's why he tried to steer us off into that different, you know, somewhat different direction. But we're not deterred. I think we're more determined than ever to try to nudge this along in a way that's non-confrontational, that's collaborative.
Yeah.
So that's just what I had to say.
Okay, Jonathan?
Thank you. I wanted to bring up the idea that came out of the Joe Gould conversation about starting some kind of a process, building on what Rick said was the way these things work is through processes. And Joe said, look, the way to move the school is to get all the stakeholders to think about what this means for the school and to reflect and to actually decide together what the big changes that have to be made. So when I mentioned that to Bill a little while ago, he said, yes, I think that's a great idea. As a matter of fact, I was thinking of doing that in the summer, of having he called it an environmental summit. And he said that he was very open to that, and he was looking for ways to do that would be effective. And I said, well, we've been looking similarly. We've been looking for places where that may have been done, and people that have facilitated that, and where it has had the outcomes that one would expect to have in mobilizing a whole community faster than it would normally move. So I wanted to ask Rick if he, because we're kind of searching, and we see how this discussion is working itself through many different academic institutions. You can see it in the colleges, you can see it. The one I'm closest to is Yale, and I can see that things happening every day basically there. It's just there are all kinds of new initiatives and fundraising initiatives, all kinds of things are happening on campus there related to this School of Forestry, Environment 350, all kinds of things, which he knew about also. So I think since we are looking for some kind of a proposal where the faculty and the alumni and the trustees would go set aside a week and think about this as an institutional challenge that requires a very significant response, system-wide, school-wide response. I think that's something that would be extremely valuable if we could come up with something that moves them. It would have to be led by the principal without any doubt. It would move him to go ahead and do something like that.
But also, could I just jump in here, John? I mean, I think sometimes, when an institution wants to do something that it's not quite sure that it wants to do, if you can hire a consultant, that is expert in a particular area and
Right.
kind of turn over leading the process of having, a group of people together for a week, that would include trustees and students and alumni and faculty and administrators, and say, okay, we're going to meet together for a week. We've got a consultant who's going to try and lead us through this process. And, hopefully you will come out with something constructive by the end. You might not, but hopefully you would. I mean, Rick, what do you think of that kind of an idea?
Yeah, it's possible. I do think getting having a meeting of stakeholders is a good idea. One of the things that I should know, but I don't know, and all of you may know better, is of course Bill Rawson works for the Board of Trustees. They are the ultimate bosses, and so are there any advocates on the Board of Trustees as far as climate change initiatives go? Because that would be the an effective avenue to get going. One of the other things I'll just throw in here is I think we need to be careful to separate Exeter's educational mission, which includes, implicitly training students to be leaders, as you pointed out, from Exeter's efforts to go green or to be carbon neutral by such and such a date. And the reason why I say this is it's extremely difficult for any institution at the latitude of Exeter or Ithaca or anywhere else to become carbon neutral without buying carbon offsets. And that's simply because we are too far north, we're too cold, we don't have enough sunlight in the winter time. It's not windy enough, except, you know, on maybe on the coastline or whatever, and so on. To give you one example, Cornell right now is drilling a deep, or will be drilling within the next 6 months, a deep geothermal borehole to test whether we can heat the campus using enhanced geothermal capabilities. And we're doing this, and it's a very long shot because it's not a question of whether the earth gets hot enough as you go down. It's a question of whether you can flow enough fluids through the hot rock to heat up and bring back to the surface and then heat all the buildings in the winter. It was you know, 3 degrees here this morning. So a heating load is a very substantial part of our, in fact, it's the biggest part of our carbon footprint here at Cornell. We don't know whether that will work. And we are spending, we and the federal government who are supporting us are spending, you know, $8 to $10 million on a project that we have no idea whether it will work or not. And we won't know until we drill a hole, until we spend that money. And so it's actually going to be very difficult for Exeter to become truly carbon neutral without buying offsets or buying, doing things like investing in solar plants and deserts and things like that, which are another way of doing it. And I think what I'd certainly advocate for this group would be to focus, as you mostly have been, I think, on the educational mission, developing leaders of tomorrow who are savvy and understand what's at stake and so on. And coming back to the immediate discussion, if there is some sort of summit at Exeter that involves the different stakeholder groups, that's a great start. It does depend on what the follow-up is, right. And so on. And the follow-up will be more likely if the Board of Trustees is firmly behind it, because they control the purse strings and they are Rawson's boss. But it also involves having sufficient number of advocates on the faculty to actually deliver to help deliver or enable the students to learn this stuff. And it's going to take a lot of thought for figuring out how to deliver a program, as I said, over the course of 4 years when these students are most impressionable, to get them to take on the biggest challenge that humans have faced.
Yeah. Well, we're drawing near an hour and a half of time that we've spent on this. I don't know how much we want to go over that. I will just put, John has mentioned a couple of times the conversation we had. I guess it was a week ago. Yesterday, it was on a Friday with another member of our class who's not on the Climate Action Committee, but it has a lot of history in with the school. The idea for this sort of whatever you want to call it, this gathering of people key stakeholders to see what we can do. And 4 of us are still here that were on that conversation are still there. And I know that we're trying to move ahead to find out who the sympathetic souls would be in the trustees. Basically what we know is that Ira Helfand will be the leader of a 3-person, probably a 3-person subcommittee of the trustees. And do you know Ira Helfand, Rick? So he's a class of '67. He's actually a a Nobel Prize winner as a member of the Physicians for Social Responsibility. He's a doctor. So, and he's mostly been concerned about nuclear power. So he has experience, addressing big picture things in that aspect of his life. So we think that he would be likely to be able to understand the issues of what climate, the challenges of the climate. We also,
Why don't we set up a meeting with him?
well,
Why don't we've talked about this, and the students went ahead and did it.
we don't
So
know
why
that
are
they
we
do, Joe. We don't know. We know that I was told that they were going to. I haven't heard that they did it. So that's
Okay, but why are we not doing it?
Well, we haven't decided to do it, but I suppose I think we could. I would
Take a
like,
vote?
we'll have to. I think we need to talk about that. So.
Okay, I'm for it.
I don't see the downside.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, I think we
I
should.
mean, the worst thing that happened is that we ask him and he's too busy to talk to us for a while.
Right. Mhm. Yeah. Well,
I can get mine.
Yeah, I think we should contact him.
yeah. Well, we'll work on that. I think I think we have an email address for him. So
I think we should let Rick know that we're looking for, I mean, compared to the rest of us, I mean, we're not climate experts in this group. And Rawson has pointed out to us that we're not representative of the alumni at all, because we're all, older, white males. So we're desperately, we need more credentials we have to bolster our credibility by having more.
More allies.
We need to have more academics, people that understand education, and that understand all the things you've explained to us today, which has been really valuable, because we have to understand how schools work. I mean, this sacred space of curriculum reform is key to. I mean, we know that's the way it works. So it would really help if we could have, in our more conversations with people like you.
Mhm. But we need
to find them.
more.
We haven't found. The only one we found. Joe found you, which we're really thankful. But we need more. We need more Exonians that are active in what's actually happening. They're in the arena right now.
Well, even more Exonians who feel urgency.
right.
I mean, they don't have to be experts, but they have to feel urgency. I mean,
Right.
we do need more allies and more people in the ranks here.
And
Definitely.
I can guarantee that students of color and young students today, as you know from your own experience, are definitely behind this.
Right.
Sure.
It is, I would say your class and even up through my class are maybe a little unusual, or this group is unusual in caring as much as you do about climate change, because many people in mid and late career have either thrown up their hands, or they look and all they see are the downsides. Oh, that's going to reduce my quality of living, or it's going to do this, or it's going to do that. We don't have the idealism that the younger generations do. And so, yes, you're unusual, but not compared to the younger students or the younger alumni and the today's students. You're unusual compared to your age group. So,
And we have talked about enlisting people from other classes, Rick, just as you've suggested. And I guess we need to get going on that.
Mhm.
So Rick, if you know of anyone, give us some names and contacts that
Please
we can
do.
reach out.
Sure.
well, there's certainly, I mean, I can, there are people, I know three or four alums in my own in classes in the 1970s who were earth scientists and involved in educational efforts and things like that, and so on. So I can
You
pass
send-
those names along.
Yeah.
That'd be
You could-
great.
You
That'd be
could, you
terrific.
could contact them and find out if they're interested in hearing from people like us.
I think, like-minded people tend to band together.
Right, right. Well, just so you know, this Zoom meeting has been recorded and it'll be available on our YouTube channel, possibly later tonight or certainly tomorrow. And I'll send out a link to everyone.
Conrad, before we finish, I just want to jump in on two things. One, I think what we're talking about are several different things that are not mutually exclusive. And I want to weigh in on the side also, I think, following up on Joe's frustration on dealing with and supporting the students who are already got the bit in their teeth, and let's help them run. There is I've been impressed with what they put out, at least a small group of them. And I think that there is a tremendous opportunity there. We've talked about doing it. Let's do it. To report on, I said I would contact some folks in Maine who are dealing specifically with youth in climate action in Maine. And both of them that I have contacted, Chloe Maxman, who is a state senator, who has a book coming out in May about activism with rural youth on political issues, but she is very much charged on the climate issue. And also Anya Wright, who is the Sierra Club leader on youth action. She's founded the Maine Youth Action Committee, and they are both interested in being involved in this process, supporting these efforts. Whether that means showing up on April 25th, Chloe cannot because she's got too many things going on. Anya might be able to be, but are definitely interested in either a Zoom meeting with students, stopping in at Exeter on the way down to Boston for 2 hours and meeting with a group of students and talking about their experience, but direct action with the students. There's a lot going on in Maine. Let's take advantage of it.
Great,
Right.
great.
If they can't make it on the 25th, on the actual date, if they can make it, in that time frame, over that weekend or the week before, the week after. But whenever they can, get them there and get them connected.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
I just wanted to mention that our classmate, George Tucker, was involved in educational efforts in Maine for his career, right?
Right,
Mhm.
right.
So
He's in Farmington, I think.
yeah, yes. So I don't know if George is retired or what he's doing now, but it'd be good to try to contact him.
I'll track him down. I knew him then, and we'll track him down now.
Good.
Yeah. The last I knew, he was in Farmington and retired.
Right. I think that's right.
I will say that Exeter does not make it easy for cross-class communication. So,
No, they don't, but we're working on that too. I mean, I think we're just trying to see where we can nudge them in a little bit.
So Nat, you had spoken to Janie, who is she say anything about this? As she's in charge of alumni generally, or alumni relations?
She's the president of the General Alumni Association.
Yeah.
And I called her up primarily because she's the executive director of the Kennedy School at Harvard. And I wanted to ask her about courses at Harvard that she thought might have some relevance for Exeter. So I did ask her about some names of people in the Exeter alumni group that she thought would be possible allies. And the first name that she mentioned was Tom Steyer,
Tom
who's
Steyer.
probably familiar to most of you. And so, of course, the Institutional Advancement Office of Exeter has already got Tom Steyer very much on their radar screen. But I did have a conversation with someone in the institutional office there about having a conversation with Tom Steyer to see if he might be interested in, funding possibly this stakeholder, meeting we're just discussing. But it was primarily my discussion with Jenny Wilson was about what's going on at Harvard.
If I can offer some insight from an academic institution, I normally alumni affairs departments guard their sources, and particularly the well-off alumni, very carefully, and
Right.
they do not want third parties or even other people within the institution approaching them for money. So I'm surprised that she mentioned Steyer and so on. But anyway, we are, as a chair of a department at Cornell, I was told in no uncertain terms that there were certain people that I simply could not approach for money
Right.
Well,
under
Rick,
any circumstances.
Ricky, you're certainly correct, I believe. But I mean, I have raised this with the institutional advancement people at Exeter. I have not tried to be in touch with Tom Steyer myself. So, we'll see how it goes. But I mean, I certainly understand we need to be careful about that kind of thing, because again, we don't want to be, ruffling any feathers unduly.
Well,
You're not employees of the institution,
True.
so
We
I'm
are
not
not.
sure you have to be careful about it. But I'm just surprised that she mentioned the name. That's all.
In any case, our focus is not on money. It's not about raising, money for some general idea of changing Exeter's, attitude towards climate change. What we're looking for is people's time, is people's energies, people's involvement, is people's participation, is what they can, give of their life energy to this, not, just going to PayPal and clicking and say, now I've done my thing for climate change.
Mhm.
So we're looking for alumni like Rick, exactly like Rick, who, can give that, who, have experience and knowledge and talent and resources and are concerned, and will, commit and give their time to making something happen.
Yep.
So tell the alumni people that we're not asking for your donor list,
Right.
Have we wrapped up? I mean,
I guess we're getting close. I mean, one of the questions, I mean, so those of us who were on the Zoom conference with Joe Gould are interested in sort of exploring possibilities that came out of that. And if there's any of you who weren't in that first conversation but would like to be included in whatever emerges or what we're trying to work on, just let me know.
Well, again, what are you trying to work on? You're trying to work on putting a week seminar of stakeholders together?
One of the I would characterize this as to say that one of the things we want to accomplish is to invite people in a collaborative manner to try to figure out what we want to work on. I don't think we want to try to ram anything down anybody's throat, but to see if there are kindred spirits who think there's merit in reaching for other new forms of collaboration on that address the climate crisis.
Okay, I would say that has been, from the very beginning, what we've been
Right.
talking about. From the very beginning.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I don't see it's not.
How can we get more people involved?
Yeah.
to get other classes involved, Joe.
Yeah. That's why I took, I thought we were going to send out a message that Nat and Conrad were going to put together. And I, got 70 years of class correspondence email addresses and put that, in a document so that could be sent out. But, are we going to do anything with that?
Well, I think if we're going to have some kind of a stakeholder conference or meeting to decide what happens going forward, I think Bill Rawson just indicated to John Coles this afternoon that if something like that happens, Bill Rawson wants to be involved with that, if not leading that. And I think that's, so there has to be, from what I know at this moment, is that we would have to have another conversation with Bill Rawson and say, well, look, is this something that you really are serious about leading? I mean, do you want to really have a stakeholder meeting from all the different constituencies at Exeter to try and figure out what we want to do as a community going forward? Because I don't think we have, I mean, I know Joe Dwayne has a clear idea, and maybe some of the rest of you have a clear idea, but I'm not sure that we as a group have a clear idea of how to go forward. But also, even if we did, Bill Rawson has got to, it seems to me, with the trustees, be leading the charge here. And so he needs to be, agreeable to any kind of stakeholder conference or work group that,
Right.
gets.
Does that need to be our message to them? We have to, can we not just send out a message to all these classes and saying, if you're interested in climate change and working with Exeter to, promote the education of these students to become climate activist leaders, join us. You don't have to talk about some stakeholder meeting or anything else. I don't know why we have to ask Bill Rawson's permission to do that. It can be a very short, message, very general. If you're interested in climate action change at Exeter, let us know. We want to talk to you.
I think that's not threatening. I agree with you, Joe. I think that we take the temperature out there and see what kind of response we get. I'd be in favor of doing that.
Likewise.
I think you're right. There's certainly no reason why you can't do that. The most effective way of leading is from behind and making other people look good. And if you can manage this so that it also makes Bill Rawson look good, it will be more successful than if it is something that, he sees, even if unreasonably so, if he sees it as a threat.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, we've talked about that, Rick. It's an excellent point that we absolutely need his buy-in. But if he knows, if we can go to him, after doing this polling of other classes and say, gee, there's quite a bit of interest out there, then he can claim it as his idea, for crying out loud. That's okay.
Well, if I were Bill Rawson, I would want to know what we were planning in advance, because if we as a group were to send out a notice to all of the class correspondents and say, this is what we think is a good idea, and everybody in the classes of, from 1940 to 2020 start writing into the principal and say, well, why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing this? And we hadn't told him about it. I'm not sure, that would have a great result. So I think from my point of view, if I were Bill Rawson, I would want to have a couple more conversations with us about this, just to make sure that, he understands what might be coming here. That's my own opinion, which isn't quite the same as all the rest of you, perhaps.
Well, that might be the safest way to do it, Nat. And so, to have that next conversation with him and say, by the way, we're thinking about getting in touch with other classes and just to see what kind of level of interest there is out there.
Right.
Yeah, and the other thing we talked about, and I think it is worth considering, is to see if rather than our sending out individual messages to class agents or class officers, or if we could get the cooperation of the alumni office to sort of facilitate that, it seems that would be already a kind of the school would be involved in a way that would feel, so they wouldn't feel threatened, but that may not be the case.
Well, I can tell you that the alumni office is not going to send out that kind of communication without a conversation with Bill Rawson first.
That's right. That's right.
For that.
Right. That's what I would. Yeah. That's my point.
Yeah, we also talked about, in the next Exeter Bulletin coming up, getting some article. Are we making any kind of moves or any progress, to follow up on that? I guess the answer is no.
I haven't been, no.
No.
Okay.
Terry did give us a plug as the Cal team.
Right.
Yeah.
But who reads the class of 64 notes, right?
The class of 64, maybe.
Right.
So what about having a proposing to Exeter that they organize with your help a climate summit in the summer of hopefully 2022, inviting all alumni who from all classes who want to come back and learn about climate change, get up to speed. It wouldn't be advertised as a climate summit about what to do, what Exeter should do, but just simply, if all classes, if you want to get up to speed on it, we're going to put together a program of panels and discussions and things like that over the course of, I would say, no longer than about 3 days, because that's what most people can stand. And come back and enjoy Exeter in the summertime and participate in this grand discussion and so on. And that would serve two purposes. First of all, it would automatically attract alumni from all classes who are interested in this and allow this group and other classes to network and make connections. And secondly, even if you don't advertise it as a, what is Exeter doing and is Exeter doing enough, those questions are going to come up, right? Because you're going to get the impassioned alums who are really care about climate change, and they're naturally going to, corner Bill at the picnic or at the cocktail party or whatever and say, are you doing enough? And so you kill two birds with one stone. You begin the networking. You also bring to bear all alumni from different classes who are interested in this issue. And yet you've never set it up as, we are trying to help Exeter be better at climate change. The way you're offering Exeter a chance to lead in climate change by hosting this summit, and Exeter will also be pressured by hosting a summit like this.
So Rick, do you agree to be the keynote speaker of this 3-day event?
Well, I don't have enough of a reputation to attract a whole load of people. And I will say, my expertise is more on the energy side than it is on the climate side. But
Get Al Gore.
But if you, Al Gore would be maybe not the best choice, simply because it's too political. And you want to attract people from all stripes and so on. But if you can put together a panel of people, and maybe I'd be one of them or maybe not. I'm not saying this because I want to do it, but I think it's a good idea. And you have workshops and discussion panels and things like that. And that's an organic way of starting the networking between classes, putting pressure on the academy because people are going to ask those questions, and allowing the academy to look like they're leading this issue.
I think it's a great idea. There's only 3 problems: people, time, and money.
Right.
And I think those are all big problems. And I think the time frame is way too short. Putting together something like that that's going to be effective, well done, well funded, and be a good show, it's going to push it to 2023, because otherwise,
you're right.
Yeah, I don't think we'd have enough time to.
It's a great idea.
But 2023 is a possibility.
It
is.
Yeah, but we need to start working on it now. So let's.
Well,
we need to have another, I guess, another Zoom with people who want to talk about how we would move that forward, and I guess maybe John needs to have another phone conversation with Bill Rawson to see how, once we have an idea of what it would be, to see if he bites at all at wanting to
Right.
have that happen.
And pony up.
Yeah.
I like that idea a lot.
Yeah. Okay. I think I detect consensus.
Yep.
Well, Rick, thank you so much. It has been wonderful to have you on this call. You've had some great ideas, and it's been great to hear your thoughts, and also to read your paper that Joe Duane had distributed. That was really a wonderful paper that was very precise, concise.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And thank you for allowing me to blather on at you about these things. So anyway.
Well, we'd like to continue to invite you as we have ongoing meetings, subject to your availability.
Here, here.
So
Sure.
Yes,
Great
thank
idea.
you.
Well, thank you.
That's assuming you would like that, or whatever. We can let you know about when we're going to be doing things.
Well, I 10 years ago, I felt like I was the only person who cared about Earth education at Exeter, and to discover this group has increased my faith in the alumni group, at least. So
Right. Well, that's good.
Rick, a long time ago, back in the Middle Ages, when I started grad school at Yale, what was then the Yale School of Forestry, and while I was there, it was changed to Yale School of Forestry and Environmental Studies, and now it has a new name. But the first year, that would have been the fall of '68, some wonderful professors, Herb Borman among them, pulled together a whole series of lectures that went on throughout the academic year on issues in the environmental crisis. And that was 1968. And it was very, very effective. And in fact, helped the school, pivot in the way it taught students. The curriculum changed markedly after that.
Mm-hmm.
So it can happen.
Yep.
All these wonderful speakers from outside came in, and it was really quite a series of lectures.
Mm-hmm.
John, do you have something you want to say?
No.
No. Okay, so you still have your hand. Your electronic hand is still there, but
No.
okay.
Oh, geez.
Well, I mean, we can, if we are sort of winding down, I will thank Rick in particular and everyone else who's here. I guess we lost Joe Simons, but otherwise we've had 10 most of the night. And as I said, the recording, I'll get started on converting this recording to something that we can make easy to distribute, and it'll either be done tonight or tomorrow. And I'll send you the link, send the link around, and that link, once the YouTube channel has for Climate Action Leadership has, I think this will be maybe the 11th or 12th video we've put up. So they're all there, and they're all say a little bit about them, and their dates are there, so you can see our meetings with the students and other things. So if is anybody else have anything to say, or shall we wrap it up for tonight? And we'll figure out when we can have another meeting to try to talk about where to go from here.
are we going to meet with the students soon?
Haven't heard from them.
Okay, I'll contact them and try and set it up.
Sure. I mean, they've been singularly unresponsive for about almost, since the last I heard was they were going to have a meeting with Health End, but I don't even know that it happened. So
okay.
It's really shocking that they have other things to do besides pay.
no, I can't figure this out. I thought they were well, but we have some things that we can do even without the students. So.
Sure.
All right, good night.
Good night.
Good night.
everyone.
Okay, good night,
Thank you.
everybody. Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you, Rick. Thanks very much.
Thanks so much, Rick. Thanks, Conrad. Thanks, John.
bet.
Yeah, thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.